Shalom Aleichem, everyone. I hope everyone is doing great. We are I'm still on the high of Chag Pesach, an unbelievable Pesach, really strong with my family, as I mentioned last week. And we've already started the new Zman. We don't wait till Rosh Chodesh. We start as early as we can. It's a short Kayed Zman in Yeshiva. We want to maximize every moment, every opportunity. And Baruch Hashem, we're off to a great start. Yeshiva's going great, and still really on the highs of Chag Pesach. We find ourselves this week with a double Parsha, Tazria Metzora. And really though, Tazria Metzora really discusses one topic in great length, the topic of tzaras, and the topic of the process by which a person, or begadim, or a bias becomes menuga, becomes afflicted with tzaras, and the process by which we can go ahead and come out of that process, out of the process of tzaras. But in the course of the lengthy discussion of tzaras, these parashas also discuss other tumos, other different types of bodily tumos. There's a theme of what we call tumos hayotze megufo, tumos that come out of the body. And the parsha opens up, for example, with the tuma of yoledes, that when a woman has a baby, when she has a baby boy, she's tmeya. Isha ki Tazria v'yalda zachar v'tama shivas yamim. She's tmeya for 7 days. Then of Yom Hashmini yimol b'sar olaso bris milah, and then 33 days of blood bleeding, which is demei tahara. But there is 7 days of tumas yoledes for a boy, and double those amounts for a girl. That there's 14 days of tumah. That's another tumah that you find in this parsha. We also find discussed in Parshat Tazria Metzora the tumah of a zav. The tumah of a zava, a female zava, a woman or a man who has some kind of secretion from their sexual organs. You have that in these parashas as well. You have the tumah of nida. In these parashas, you have the tumah of keri. A lot of tumos hayotze migufo. And the question is, when it comes to these human tumos, which again, it's on the heels of last week's parasha, Parshas Shmini, where the end of the parsha is tumos of behema, tumah of animals, and now we're moving into tumah of human beings. So there's a real continuum. In fact, Rashi at the end of last week's parsha says, just like in the Brias Ha'olam, there's a very specific order, that first the animals are created, the birds, the fish, then the animals, and then man. So when it comes to the description of tumos, so first we describe the tumos of the animal kingdom, and then we move on to the higher order tumos of human beings. What exactly is the theme, the idea perhaps that underlies all of these tumos? So two possibilities. One idea that is a popular idea is that tumah and misa are very much connected. Perhaps certainly the paradigmatic tumah, the avi avos hatumah, is tumas meis. And every other type of tumah that you find, of a bodily tumah, really on some level partakes of meis. It's a fundamental idea, a fundamental hashkafic idea. Meis equals tumah. Vitality, vibrancy, life, that is affirming, that is tahara, that is growth. When that vitality, that vibrancy ceases to exist, death ensues, there's no longer opportunities for growth. That's when you have that sense of tumah. And that's why for a person to become tahor, who is tamei, he has to go into the mikveh, because the mikveh is seen as that mayim chayim. Water is seen as that vibrancy, that life-giving force. Tumah represents death, is a misa. Misa is what invokes tumah, and therefore the tumah of a nida is very understandable. The tumah of a bal keri, a male who has a seminal emission, is also very understandable, because in nida, in bal keri, there's potential life. In the female zera, in the male zera, there is potential life that now is being expelled, that's going unrealized, that's not realizing its fruition, and therefore that triggers, it's a quasi-death experience. Perhaps that's exactly the idea of a Metzora. The Metzora, his limb, his body part, becomes white. It loses its life. It's a dead limb. And that whiteness, that deadness in the limb, it no longer has that ki hadam hu hanefesh, pulsating through it, that sense of passion. So that's what engenders tumah. The limb is a dead limb. And similarly, the zav and the zav, there's something awry in the reproductive system that is engendering this secretion. Again, it's a similar secretion to Nida and Balkari, and as a result, life forces are not being realized, are being expunged. And as a result, if life force is not being realized, that's akin to death. That's the idea of the Tumah. But you'll ask me a question, a very good question. Well, how does Yoledes fit in? Why exactly is the Yoledes Tameh? After all, she's actually affirming life. She's giving life. She's producing life. So how can you have Tumah when you are in this life-generating mode? It seems to contradict everything we're saying. So I don't think so. And I don't remember where I heard this. I think Rav David Tzvi Hoffman, perhaps Rav Soloveitchik. I don't remember. But the idea is as follows. When it comes to a Yoledes, who's the one who's Tameh? Is it the child, the Zachar and the Nekeva that are born that are Tameh? No. It's the mother who becomes Tameh. Why is she becoming Tameh? Not because she's dying, Chas v'shalom, but there is an element of death. How so? Because before the Leda, her guf, her single guf, was carrying two neshamos. Carrying her neshama and carrying the neshama of the fetus that is inside of her. As a result of the Leda, so sure, there's a new birth, there's a newborn, there's a new nefesh in the world. But from the mother's perspective, she has lost a neshama. There's been a netilas neshama. Her guf was supporting two neshamos. Now her guf is only supporting, after the birth, only one neshama. So a neshama has left her. And since a neshama has left her, that's death. That's a ke'ein misa, and therefore there is a sense of tumah that ensues. So even Yoledes, who's producing a life, which is true, an independent life, but from her narrow perspective, she's losing a neshama, and therefore that is a notion for her. Her guf becomes tameh. That's a very, very profound and significant philosophical idea, because we all understand that we want to be alive. But we have to understand that what life means. Life is about tahara, growth, development, moving from destination to destination, station to station life, advancing oneself. That's what life is all about. That's what tahara is all about, continued growth. And when a person, Rahman al-Itzlan, loses life, can no longer have that capacity to grow, so sure, the neshama is now freed of the guf. But there's something fundamentally missing in that guf. That guf is now no longer in that vibrant, active mode. And therefore, tumah ensues. There's a vacuum. There's a hollow. And that hollow becomes full of tumah. And on some level, the way we live our lives have to be lives that are infused with growth, that are infused with that life-giving force, and not just have this hollowness that gets full of tumah. A very, very core and fundamental idea. I want to show one other idea that, again, perhaps a different angle on these tumos hayotze megufo. Perhaps another idea, again, I think, once again, Rav David Tzvi Hoffman, perhaps Rav Hirsch, maybe Rav Hirsch. Now I'm thinking Rav Hirsch. So he suggests the following, is we are, and Rav Hirsch speaks about this a lot, we are this guf neshama combination. If you want to use Sifrei Chasidus, Sefer Tanya, Nefesh HaBahamis, Nefesh Elokis, that somehow work in tandem. And the way we're supposed to work with this very, very complex, compound organism, comprised of guf and neshama, is we're supposed to work with our intellect. Our intellect, our neshama driving in the driver's seat. That's how we're supposed to work. There's a vort I like to say over a lot, and I'll say it over now, is that there's a fundamental difference between animals and humans. Humans and animals, we share a lot of the same organs. We all have brains. We have a heart, and we have lower bodily organs. We have klayot, we have kidneys. Animals have kidneys, men have kidneys. All the same. We have brains, moach. We have heart, lave. We have kidneys, klayot. Moach, lave, klayot. But there's a difference. Because when it comes to humans, Humans walk vertical. We stand upright, with the moach on top, the lave in the middle, and the kloyos towards the bottom. Animals walk horizontal, with moach, lave, and klayot on the same level, because fundamentally, when it comes to animals who are just driven by instinct, by guf, there's no fundamental difference between the intellect, the moach, the lave, the heart, and the klayot, the kidneys. When it comes to man, there is a hierarchy, and he is supposed to be driven by his intellect. His intellect is what's supposed to make his decisions, powered, energized, fused with the passion that comes from the lave. That's in the middle. And then the lower bodily functions, that's his animalistic side, which certainly are important and have a role, but certainly do not drive a person's decisions. Brain, lave, klayot. What's the Rashi Tevos of those three words in Hebrew? Moach, lave, klayot, melech. Melech. A person who wants to live majesty, wants to live as royalty. So he makes sure his intellect is driving his decision making, powered, energized by the passion of the lave, and then the lower bodily functions. That's how we're supposed to work, with our brains, our intellect, being at the center of our decision making, not our guf, not our nefesh habahamis. That's how we're supposed to work. But there's certain times in life where the guf takes over, where the nefesh habahami takes over, where in a certain sense we no longer have bechira, where the guf dominates. Classic case, of course, is Misa, where there is no neshama. It's all guf, and there's nothing left, and therefore that creates tumah. But there are other instances as well. A woman wants to decide when she's going to become a nida. No, that's not how it works. The body dictates. The body says, and that's what happens. Yeah, today hormonal works can perhaps manipulate things a little bit, but not in principle. In principle, the guf makes decisions. And then, that's it. It's the guf is in the driver's seat. A yoledes. I remember when my wife was pregnant with my third child, I don't remember, but she was in labor. She went into labor, and she said, you know what, she still has some shopping to do. She wanted to get shoes for the kids, and she didn't want to wait till 2-3 weeks later when she'd be more capable. So I took her shopping. We went shoe shopping while she was in labor, but at some point the body says it's time, and you don't get choices. You don't get to negotiate that. You don't get to put it on hold. The body of a yoledes takes over. It becomes all guf. And so too, when a person has ziva, zav, zava, Thomas Kerry is an emission. The body takes over. That's the common denominator of all of these tumos hayotz migufo, a Metzora. A Metzora, once again, it is an affliction. Yes, it came about as lashon hara, etc., but now it's all guf. There's no longer there's a disease that the body has now taken over. Says Rav Hirsch, that is when you have that sense of tumah, because we're supposed to operate and live our lives with a sense of a proper decision-making capacity, where our intellects are in the driver's seat, and to teach us that lesson, that how it's supposed to be when things are working well, when things are tahor. The intellect is in the driver's seat. And to teach us that lesson is those periods of life when the guf takes over, when we're all guf, a Metzora, a yoledes, a nida, a keri, zav, ziva, zav, zava, a Metzora, etc. Those cases, and a mace, most obviously, those cases when the guf takes over, so that's what it triggers tumah. That's what engenders that sense of tumah. And that's another very, very profound lesson, because we confront in our lives every single day thousands upon thousands of decisions. And the decisions could sometimes be made by the guf, by our lower aspects of this very complex organism, and sometimes they can be made by our intellect. And the message over here is have that proper sense of hierarchy. Live a life of malchus. Live a life of melech, where a person always understands that the moach is on top, the intellect is on top, powered, impassioned, energized by the passions of the lave, and then the role of the lower bodily functions. So we should all have a bracha, a tremendous bracha, that A, we make decisions in the right way, and that we make decisions that are life-affirming, that express life, chiyus, growth, and that special sense of tahara that we're supposed to always achieve.